The Florida Gators are once again hosting many recruits that can absolutely change their 2026 recruiting class.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free, whether it's the podcast and on YouTube. Happy Friday. I'm Brandon Olsen. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all of my written work with New York Giants on SI. We could get weird. All right. I'm just going to say that. This could get weird. At the time of recording this, it's Thursday night. I spent all day in 90-degree heat, beating sun. That's why my face is bright red because I forgot sunscreen. Hey, gotta love New York Giants OTAs, right? Gotta love it. But the Florida Gators once again have a big weekend of recruiting ahead of them. And look, not everybody that we talk, or it would be very unique if everybody that we talked about today actually showed up on campus this weekend. And I say that to make this part clear. Not every visit that gets canceled or rescheduled is canceled or rescheduled because of, I'm no longer interested in going. Things happen. Like personal situations can pop up, car can break down. Things happen where visits get canceled all the time. The important thing to note is that if you see a reason for the visit being canceled, or if you see someone say, hey, I'm just canceling the visit. If the information that you get is visit canceled, not usually a great indicator. But if you get visit rescheduled or moved back, usually pretty decent that, hey, you're still in it. This isn't an I'm not interested cancellation. Okay? Just wanted to throw that out there because I know that, we'll probably talk about at least one guy here who's not going to show up this weekend, which is fun. The first player we are going to talk about, though, is edge Jake Kreul. 4-star everywhere, except he's a 5-star on ESPN. And I don't know how to put this other than he is a freaking dude. Watch the film for Jake Kreul and you're going to see just a beast. That's it. He's just a monster. There's no other way to put it. His official visits are interesting, I'll say. And for today, whenever I talk about official visits, I'm saying them in the order that they've taken place. And so for Jake Kreul, it's Colorado, Ohio State, Florida, Ole Miss, Texas, and Oklahoma. That means that Colorado and Ohio State have already happened. Florida is this weekend, and Ole Miss, Texas, and Oklahoma are later down the line. And that could just help with, just keeping track of, if I say Florida last, that means Florida's got the last scheduled official visit. And so with Jake Kreul, those have been his official visits, which an interesting set, right? Ohio State, 4-star, except again, 5-star on ESPN. So an elite edge rusher, Ohio State's going to be in the mix for. Big name player, Colorado is going to be in the mix for. But the other 4 schools are in the SEC. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about Florida, Ole Miss, Texas, Oklahoma. And then, look, I don't think Colorado is going to be the spot. I'll say that. Not that they can't be. I don't think they are. But Ohio State's always really enticing. And I mean, look, Texas, they've been churning out defensive line talent. And outside of Colorado, all of the schools on this list are known for having pretty good D-line and edge talent coming out there. Jake Kreul's recruitment has been quiet, not in the sense of him not getting recruited, of course, but quiet just in the sense of not much comes out from these visits. We're probably not going to have much information after this visit with Florida. I will say I personally don't think Florida is in the lead here, but there's always a chance things change. And with how many schools are getting OVs, like if I see someone that's like, I have these 6 official visits set up and it's the summer, I usually expect those guys to be flip candidates all the way up until signing day. Just because, you've had these many schools that you're interested in, you commit to one, and then, let's say you commit to Ohio State, and then Florida and Texas are still heavily recruiting you. Just chip away, Chippewas, right? Like that's how things get. That's Billy Napier's approach to things, is just chip away. And I always like to say Chippewas after I say chip away. So there's that. Then there's also edge rusher Hezekiah Harris, a long-term Auburn commit for almost a year, which now in recruiting is basically marriage for life, or at least what it feels like. It's like, yeah, like the 25th wedding anniversary is the equivalent of 1 year being committed to a program. Hezekiah Harris is a 4-star everywhere. And look, I still think that Auburn has a pretty decent leg up over all of the competition here. Official visits are Auburn, Florida, and Tennessee. But the thing is here also is that he has Florida this weekend and then Tennessee June 20th. So if next weekend stays open, that means that he won't have a visit scheduled for next week, and he'll have 2 weeks essentially to just sit there with the Florida visit in mind before the Tennessee one. And that matters because recency bias matters. And you watch, and I understand many people wanting to say like, oh yeah, no, like it doesn't really matter that much for the recency bias. But you look at it, there's usually a pretty good indicator of, if a kid commits shortly after his official visits and he's got that commitment date set, last official visit, most likely one. And so recency bias does matter there. And so being able to just sit there and stew if it's a great visit, you're going to get 2 weeks sitting there, could matter when it comes time to either say, hey, I'm going to shut it down, or to say, hey, I'm going to flip. So that could matter as well with that potential 2 weeks off. 2 weeks. Edge rusher Kevin Ford, also a 4-star everywhere. Official visits Alabama, Florida, Texas A&M, USC out of Duncanville, which is the same place Colin Simmons came out of, if I'm not mistaken. And I do think that this recruitment is going to drag out. I think that Florida has done a very good job from people I've spoken to, what I've been told. I think Florida's done a very good job keeping themselves at, or I don't want to say at, keeping themselves near the top. And the only reason I don't like to say at is not to say that Florida can't be number one in this. It's to say that I haven't spoken to the player himself. And so I'm not going to say based on, second count or secondhand stories or secondhand accounts, I'm not going to say what his top school is unless he says it. So I will say that I think Florida's done a good job of keeping themselves near the top at least. And it is hard sometimes to get Texas kids out of state. Look, that they live, eat, breathe, sleep football there. And a lot of them are like, hey, if I can get to one of the big schools in the state, that's great. I would hope that as long as DJ Lagway is a Florida Gator, any Texas kid that Florida's recruiting, DJ Lagway is constantly in communication with. Even if he's not going to be here that long, right? Many of us expect 2026 to be DJ Lagway's last year with the Florida Gators. That means you'd get 1 year with Kevin Ford. But if you can get him here, you can get him here. Last player that we're going to talk about in this segment, defensive lineman Preston Carey, a 3-star everywhere, except he's a 4-star on Rivals. Official visits have been Georgia, Auburn, Florida, so smack dab in the middle, Rutgers, and Alabama. I mean, most, SEC battle plus Rutgers, which is easily explained. But before we explain that, let's make this very clear. Long Island isn't really claimed by New York. Just want to throw that. Like, Long Island isn't really claimed by New York. And if you're like, oh, yeah, I'm a New Yorker and you're from Long Island. No, you're not. Long Island, Staten Island, sorry, Dom Easley. It's just not the same there. But if Preston Carey commits to Florida, I will consider throwing my opinion in there and be like, hey, maybe we should give them a shot. So Preston, if you want to have an impact or potential impact, we'll say potential impact on just New York and Long Island and get them maybe accepted a little bit, probably not, but maybe accepted a little bit, you know what to do this weekend. All I'm saying, you can make the choice. The power's in your hands at this point. We are going to talk about pass catchers that the Florida Gators have on campus this weekend on Locked On Gators. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have way more ways than ever to play smarter and win big, and you still got minimum 3 more NBA Finals games. Just saying, if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day, every day. We are available daily and free wherever in the podcast and on YouTube. And we're talking about pass catchers in this segment. We got 5 guys to talk about here. Not the burger chain. Not going to charge you $20 for a burger from 5 guys. We're not going to get into that. Wide receiver Cedarian Morgan is a 4-star on On3 and ESPN. He is a 5-star on 24/7 and Rivals. Elite wide receiver from Alabama, and unsurprisingly, Alabama is the clear favorite here. And I don't mean that in the sense of just proximity. I don't mean, oh, he's from Alabama, so Alabama is most likely. Hell, you could argue, I hate that I'm going to say this, you can argue that if you're talking about a player from the state of Alabama, Auburn might have the leg up proximity-wise. You could argue, I hate that I admitted that. I hate Auburn. But Alabama is a clear favorite here, just in terms of how well they've done recruiting him. Makes sense, right? You've got the freshman phenom in Ryan Williams. You've got Ryan Grubb back. Got a lot going for you. If you're a receiver and you want to play for a fun offense and a productive team, Alabama's a good spot, especially if you're from the state. Makes sense. Official visits have been Colorado, Georgia, Florida, Auburn, Alabama. So Florida is, I think, publicly viewed as the most likely out-of-state option, which is great because if he does come down to the decision of, well, am I deciding in-state or out-of-state? If he's deciding out-of-state, Florida has that last official visit, which could be huge. And then you got Auburn and Alabama, and they're going to iron bowl this up just for that recruitment alone. And so that's going to come into it. So for Florida, I think this is your last chance to make a lasting impression for the out-of-state schools. But also, I do think that Florida, I think Florida right now is the second school on this list. I think it's Alabama, Florida. I think those are the top 2. And so if Florida's at worst a close third, but we know that Florida's been trying to apply pressure here. And so Cedarian Morgan, Florida, interested there. Hopefully able to make some waves this weekend. Then there's also wide receiver Somourian Wingo, 4-star everywhere. This one feels like it's Florida and Miami going at it. And I think that I will also say, I think too many people are putting it in Sharpie that it's Florida or Miami. Those are the most likely options, yes. But Alabama and South Carolina both have official visits scheduled after Florida. He already took his official visit to Miami. His official visits are Miami, Florida, Alabama, South Carolina. So he's already taken the Miami visit, which bodes well for Florida because if it truly is a Florida and Miami battle, Florida getting that second OV matters. That's going to sit with you longer. But again, you've still got Alabama and South Carolina coming up, and I don't like counting them out. The way that I look at it is, even if someone says, hey, I'm locked in with this school, I'm whatever, if you have an official visit scheduled and you keep the official visit, I am treating it like a credible threat. I'm not doing the thing where a kid commits, then, let's say a kid commits to Florida, has no OVs after that, takes an OV 2 weeks later to Alabama. Or even if he had the Alabama visit scheduled already, he commits to Florida and 2 weeks later sticks to that visit. I'm going to treat them like a credible threat. And that's the way that you should treat recruiting, in my opinion. Wide receiver Darian Williams is a 4-star everywhere, but a 3-star in 24/7. And we mentioned this a few weeks ago. He's a Florida State commit, has been a Florida State commit, but this is one of the rare cases where even though he's committed to Florida State, it feels like Florida is in the driver's seat. And I likened Darian Williams' recruitment to TJ Dice last year, Tavares Dice, who he was committed to Auburn for a while. And even shortly after he committed to Auburn, it felt like Florida was very much still in it. And then for months, it was like, yeah, Florida's right there with Auburn. And he's deciding between these two. He's torn. He's this. He's that. It feels that kind of same way with Darian Williams. And the way that I look at it, and you can look at it differently, you can disagree, but the way that I look at it is that if someone is committed to a school long-term, and for much of that time, it feels like it's that school and another school are relatively 50-50, I don't think that that usually works out well for the original commit school. So for Darian Williams, committed to Florida State for a long while, if he's Florida State and then Florida, and they're going back and forth, I feel like Florida's more likely there because if you were really committed to the first school, shut it down. But he's not. That's just my stance. Again, that's how I feel about it. That's how I felt about it with Tavares Dice. That's how I feel about it if it's someone committed to Florida and there's another school in there. That's just how I feel about that style of recruitment. But Darian Williams is someone that I think Florida's trending for, and I think I will say this. I view him as a guy that might commit this weekend. That's how I will say it there. Then we got 2 tight ends on campus this weekend. One is Kekua Almua, 3-star everywhere except ESPN, where he is unranked. IMG kid that Florida, I believe, is in the lead for right now. Official visits have been North Carolina, Florida, BYU, Washington. Pretty widespread. But he is another player that I look at and I say, hey, might commit this weekend. I think if Florida really puts the pressure on, they can get it. I don't know if they do put the pressure on. I will say that. I don't know if they do put the pressure on because when you look at Kekua Almua, he's 6'6", 260 right now. And being 6'6", 260 right now in high school makes me think you're going to be an inline guy. They've got Heath Kent, that's a tight end that they've been recruiting pretty heavily. And so I do think that if Florida puts pressure on Kekua Almua, they can get it. I don't know if they put pressure on him, though, because I think that Heath Kent would be a higher priority for them. And so I think they might be waiting until they get a decision there. Tight end Lincoln Watkins, who's also on campus this weekend, is a 3-star on 3 and 24/7. And he's unranked on ESPN. And he's a 4-star on Rivals. So we're just all over the place with this one. It's just everywhere. It's everything everywhere all at once. I don't know how else to describe it, but official visits. Florida is the first official visit, and he's got Nebraska as the other one. Personally, I think Nebraska is just getting in there because his name's Lincoln, and Lincoln is the capital of Nebraska. I don't know if it's the capital, but Lincoln's a city in Nebraska. I was never good with the capitals, but Lincoln's a city in Nebraska, if you can call it a city. So you got Florida and Nebraska in there. He is a flexed out tight end that gonna need to put on some weight. And by that, I mean he's listed as 225 pounds right now. And so that is really light if you're going to play tight end in the SEC. But as always, we don't expect any true freshman tight ends to contribute for Florida. We, as in me and the collective you that are in agreement with me, don't expect any tight end to contribute as a true freshman at Florida. The offense is complex for the position, so mentally you need time to catch up. But also a lot of these guys physically need to reshape themselves. Heath Kent, if he gets on campus, he's still going to need to reshape himself. That's it. Heath Kent's listed as 6'5", 6'6", 300 pounds. He's going to need to trim weight. I'm going to have a rocked up frame underneath it, but he's going to need to trim weight. Tony Livingston, trimmed weight. I know he was a unique situation, but still, things change. People change. Bodies change. And when these guys get in SEC programs, their body's going to change. I think Florida's in the lead for Lincoln. We'll see just how long this drags out. I don't know enough to say that I think he's someone that could pop this weekend. But again, I do think Florida's in the lead right now for him. And I think that as far as just getting a flexed out tight end option, I think he's a pretty dang good one at that. So we'll see. I don't know if he's a priority for Florida right now. I will say that as well. There's 3 other players to talk about where we couldn't really group them into a just straight up position like pass catchers or defensive line. We're going to talk about them on Locked On Gators. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast and on YouTube. And to wrap up today's episode, we are going to talk about a few guys that are or were on the visitors list. I'm going to say were because first one is 4-star cornerback Justice Fitzpatrick. This one's a tough one. He was supposed to visit this weekend. Had that visit scheduled for a bit. Then last weekend, he committed to Georgia. And then on Tuesday, he committed to Georgia. At the time of recording this on Thursday night, we haven't gotten anything, I don't know if official is the word, but we haven't gotten anything truly swaying it one way or another about if the visit's going to happen. But I will say that I doubt the visit happens this weekend. And that's not indicative of anything involving Justice Fitzpatrick specifically. That is, I think the way that recruiting is going this year, based on Florida and otherwise, so it's not just based on like JJ Perez, for example, Jameer Perez, who committed to Florida, said he wasn't taking visits, and then set up a visit for Ohio State. Which isn't a knock. I'm fine with it. I just want to make that clear. That's just a situation of what happened. It seems like this year we're seeing a lot of that, where kids are committing. Then, like let's just use Justice Fitzpatrick, for example. He can commit Tuesday. His visits that were scheduled after that don't happen. And then in the fall, he decides to visit. Like it seems like we've gotten to a point where kids, if they're committing in the spring/summer, where they're committing, canceling all of their visits afterward, and then if the school still seems interested, then they're rescheduling them. I don't know if it's just to get the clicks of saying I'm shutting it down or I'm 100% locked in or whatever it is that, I mean, I've mentioned this before. Florida had 2 kids in the 2026 class commit. One committed in the summer last year, one committed in the fall, if I'm not mistaken. Both said shutting it down. Both are no longer in the class. So it just seems the way recruiting is going is commit, cancel visits, reschedule visits. And I don't know if part of that is like an NIL thing to be like, oh, look, I've got a visit for Ohio State now. Need more money. I don't know if that's the way things are going, but that seems to be how recruiting is going right now. And so Justice Fitzpatrick has not, again, at the time of recording this, has not officially canceled anything. But I'm expecting it to get canceled and then maybe rescheduled later. That seems to be the approach they're taking now. Corner Brody Jennings, someone, by the way, we spoke about him, I think 3 weeks ago. We did a show about flipped candidates, and he was one of them, currently committed to Michigan. But we spoke about him a while back. A Mandarin kid, absolutely on flip watch. Just, he's got OVs with Illinois, Auburn, Miami, all have already happened. Florida, Georgia, and Michigan. And that Georgia one is up in the air. There's personal things going on. I don't like talking about kids' personal issues, not personal issues, things happening in their personal life, whether it's the loss of a family member or anything else. I don't like to talk about those things because it's not my place. But that Georgia one is likely going to get at least rescheduled. And so there's that with Brody Jennings, and absolutely on flip watch with that many visits, with 6 official visits. and he's an in-state kid committed all the way up north to Michigan, I think that's a decent indicator for flip watch. And I'm not saying to Florida or Miami specifically. I do think that those are the most likely options if he does flip. But again, Georgia, Auburn, they're both in there. Illinois is in there, and Illinois has been pumping out NFL talent at corner. Like people could say whatever they want about DBU and producing players, but when you're talking about just straight corners, especially corners that can play man-to-man, there are not many schools that do that better right now than Illinois is doing that. And that's just a fact of the situation. That's how they play football, and it's working for them. So we can say that about Brody Jennings and his visit list being expansive, really. But there's that one's going to be just an interesting one to follow. And then there's the lone offensive lineman this weekend, is offensive tackle Chancellor Campbell. Huge. 6'8" is his listed height. He's a 3-star everywhere. OVs are Florida, Ohio State, Penn State. And personally, I feel like Florida is still in the lead here. I think that Florida's been, public perception-wise, the team for a long while for Chancellor. But I will also say this, similar to me saying, hey, Illinois has been producing NFL cornerbacks. And look, Illinois hasn't been producing pretty much NFL anything else other than man-to-man corners. But Penn State and Ohio State have both had a lot of success recently producing NFL offensive tackles. And Florida can't say the same thing. They just can't. Florida can't go, yeah, I've done that. Like Penn State has had Olu Fashanu last year. Ohio State had Josh Simmons this year. This year? Maybe last year. It's been a blur. But they've had their offensive tackles come out and go to the NFL and have had quite a few of them find success. Obviously not Simmons yet. But Fashanu's stepping into the starting role for the Jets this year. Ohio State's got a few tackles in the league that have been there in recent years. Florida can't say that. They can't. They can say we had a couple guards. Sure. They can say we're going to have a center next year. Sure. But as far as offensive tackles, they can't say that because they brought in Brandon Crenshaw-Dixon, who had a fantastic year, and he went undrafted because of his athletic limitations, not because of anything Florida did, but he went undrafted and needs to work his way up. And I'm sorry, but I don't think that's a great selling point when Penn State and Ohio State are out there with NFL offensive tackles producing. And you can go, yeah, well, we just had our starting right tackle sign an undrafted free agency contract. That's nothing for recruiting. And I'm not saying that to bash anybody. I'm just saying that the recruiting aspect of that is going to involve, do you get guys to the NFL? And Florida can't really say that for offensive tackle. As an undrafted free agent, when we're in early June, is far from making it to the NFL. So I don't think Florida can really say that right now. And look, part of it is that Florida's had Austin Barber as their starting tackle for 3 years now. And so, he's not in the NFL. He's still here. Things like that. It's just, and one of their right tackle from 2 years ago is playing guard for their line still. So it's just, part of it is that the guys that you have put into the league haven't really hit. But part of it is also that you've got multi-year guys, or you've got guys that were playing tackle and have been multiple year Florida Gators and are still here. So there's not just that proven concept there yet. It's just not there. And that's fine, but that's going to be a thing that Florida has to deal with negative recruiting wise. I'm just pointing it out, and people are probably going to be in the comments calling me a jerk for pointing it out, but guess what? I'm right. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free. We have us in the podcast and on YouTube. We'll be back. Hopefully we'll be back on Sunday at the absolute latest. I'm going to say hopefully there's some commit action this week. I'm trying to keep my schedule clear and available so we can go live if there's a commit, which, by the way, I have the shades next to my computer 24/7, just in case we go live. But thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with New York Giants on SI, and I will see you all next time.